Last week, we talked about manifestations and the root causes of manifestation. I began to explain last week on to the manifestation of anything that we see in our lives. There is a root to that thing that has manifested. When you look at an apple tree, you look at the fruit and you know that it was not an orange seed that was planted in order to manifest what you're looking at. You know that there was an apple seed that was placed in the ground that germinated, and with the perfect conditions, sunlight, nutrients in the soil, water, perfect conditions allowed that seed to crack open underground, begin to germinate, and start to stretch roots down into the ground. Roots on top of roots on top of roots, growing on top of each other and going down underneath the surface to anchor that tree, so that over time, with those conditions continually in place, that tree would manifest above the ground after the root had already been planted. And I used an analogy or an example, things that we see manifested in our lives, characteristics that we carry, the way that we respond to people, things, situations, circumstances in our lives. There is a root cause to why we become promiscuous. There's a root cause to why we will shut down a relationship if we even feel like someone's about to hurt us. Why we have low self-esteem. There's a root cause to, why we don't express love to our own children. There's a root cause to why we have certain relationships with men. There's a root cause to why we carry a certain, women in relationships with women a certain way. There's a root cause to everything that you see that is manifested in your life. There's a root. And so basically last week, what we started to discuss was talking about recognizing the manifestation, acknowledging the low self-esteem, the promiscuity, the coping mechanisms that don't serve you, the way that you approach relationships, the way that you leave relationships, the way that you are an employee on a job. Those manifestations of your character, of your personality, or just the way that you respond to situations and people in your life, there's a root cause for that. And a lot of times it's relationships with people in your life who have victimized you or who have hurt you, when they really should have been showing you a measure of love and protection that they failed to do so. So last week, I used the example of a seed of abandonment. And I talked about how maybe your father wasn't there, whether he just walked away and was like, nope. Whatever the case is, there was a seed planted when that happened. That seed was placed into the soil of your life and began to take root, and in and of itself developed roots growing on top of it, and with the perfect conditions. For example, living in a home with a single mother who was an alcoholic, or who didn't give you attention, or who put men before you, or compared you to your siblings and you came out on the bottom all the time, or had you slaving like Cinderella while your siblings could do whatever they wanted to do, or treated your friends better than she treated you. Or those are all perfect conditions to help that negative seed that has been planted in the soil of your life to germinate and manifest things that you see on the surface of your life, such as drug abuse, as alcoholism, poor coping mechanisms, abandoning relationships before they, when you see yourself really starting to feel for somebody, low self-esteem, promiscuity. All of these things are manifestations of this one root that has been planted. So at the end of the day, we really have to get to the point where we're willing to acknowledge that there are some coping mechanisms that we use, or some characters about ourselves, characteristics or personality traits that we have adapted over time as defense mechanisms and responses to people in our relationships. We need to unearth the core of where those things come from, so that we can begin to beautify the garden of our lives. Dig down, find the root, pull it up, and replace it with the beauty that is our true and authentic self, the way that God intended for us to be, so that we can impact others the way that He intends for us to do so. And as long as we're hurting and our garden is covered with weeds with their own roots, there's no way that we can really effectively parent. There's no way we can effectively impact people on our jobs. We can't become effective leaders in our communities as women, as entrepreneurs. We can't. How are you going to be that queen wife that your husband needs you to be when your garden is covered in roots and weeds and all kind of foolishness that doesn't belong? So in order to get us to the journey, start the journey of becoming our authentic and true self. Mind you, I'm still on this journey, y'all. This is just me documenting my journey. I am an imperfect child who has been assigned with the mission to help my imperfect sisters, other imperfect children, along this journey of healing and the destination of finding your authentic self and falling madly in love with you. And finding that you are worthy of putting yourself first, that what you have been called to do is important, and that you matter. But anyway, so these are the steps that I came up with for my own life. Now, you can add to this, you can take away from this. This is just me sharing Melly's journey and what Melly has found that is working for her, as I notice the manifestations that are negative in my life that don't serve me anymore, that I'm trying to get rid of so that I can beautify the garden of my own life. Step number 1 is take notice of the thing that has manifested in you or in your life that you wish to adjust. Maybe I should. Y'all see me? It's a mess back there. Don't look back there, okay? Okay, guys. Step number 1. Take notice of the thing that has manifested in you or in your life that you wish to adjust. Whether it is an auto response to situations, and what I mean by that is how you respond to a person when they say something. There's triggers that people unknowingly bring when they're in communication with you that cause you to respond automatically a certain way. And I'm gonna give you an example of that. I had such low self-esteem that when a person would give me a compliment, initially I would shy away from the compliment. I didn't feel like I deserved it. I would perform, and whether it was in church, and people would come up to me and they'd be like, "Oh my God," they'd come in tears and how I sang that song. "Girl, you sang that song," and I'm like, okay, this is making me uncomfortable. They were appreciating the value that I just extended to them. And I did not know how to receive that, because how does a young girl with self-esteem baggage accept a compliment? So my dad, finally, he kind of noticed this and he was like, "Melly, say thank you. You deserve the compliment. You witnessed to them. You ministered to them. Just say thank you." Because I would say things like, "Oh, well, it's all God. Bless God. Whatever." I would put it off of me and not receive the appreciation, because I didn't appreciate my own gift. I didn't appreciate. I just look, okay? That is an example of what I mean by an auto response to a situation. Okay, there's a trigger that was hit there. So these are automatic responses, manifestations that are triggered by things, and you have to realize what the manifestation is and then make the adjustment by drilling down to the root like we're doing. So again, continuing on with step 1, take notice of the thing that is manifested in your life that you wish to adjust. Whether it's an auto response to a situation like we just talked about, a trust issue, Lord have mercy, do we have trust issues, especially if you were abandoned by a parent or a spouse. Judgmental attitudes. Woo, some of us can really look down our noses at people, can't we? Fear, if it's low self-esteem, whatever it is, you need to find the manifestation in your own life. Acknowledge it for what it is. Don't judge it. Don't condemn yourself. It's there. Now you just have to acknowledge that it's there and be determined to find the root and dig down and pull it. So that takes us to step 2. Step 2, acknowledge it without judging it. Don't judge it. Don't be like, oh my God, I'm such a horrible person. Oh my God, people must really see, oh, my slip is hanging. They see, people got to see my low self-esteem when I do that. That is so trifling. Why do I do that? Don't judge it. Just acknowledge it. Then trace it back to the root. Where does this come from? Ask yourself when it started and trace it back as far as you can until you can locate the root from which the manifestation came. Okay? Step 3, decide what you're going to do with the findings. So you traced it and you found that it has a direct, that the fact that your father abandoned you, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 5 times, but 7 times in your life, like mine, has affected the way that you have relationships with men, the way that you trust, the way that you fear abandonment, and the things that happen in your life that cause you to be triggered into responding automatically in a certain way. That has become your defensive blanket. That has become your defensive mechanism, all right? So decide what you're going to do with your findings. I found mine. For my low self-esteem, the fact that I was so impressed that a man was impressed with me. I'm so impressed with the fact that you're impressed with me. I'm not even thinking about the fact that you're an idiot, that you are not meant for my life, that you are a liar, that you are a cheat. I am ignoring every single red flag that is possible to be seen, that you showing me right up from the front. Why? Because I was abandoned by my father. And now I'm looking for acceptance, validation from a man who ain't measuring up to nothing that my daddy means or intends for my life. Daddy meaning my heavenly father. Because you are not a fatherless child. Let me tell you something. I am not a fatherless child. Yes, my natural father abandoned me. But at the end of the day, I have a heavenly father who has been there from day one. Day -1. Okay? And when we realize and embrace that, that's when you begin to heal. Promiscuity. I began to engage and indulge in relationships just simply because somebody found me interesting. Forget the fact that it was just sex. Forget the fact that I was a side chick. Forget the fact that they didn't even tell me they were married. But they find me interesting. They find me attractive. Oh my God. Then it's like, wow, what do you see in me? This is what's up. And you begin to embrace the idea that someone finds you interesting, finds you attractive, finds you worthy of being in your space because your daddy didn't. And now, low self-esteem, promiscuity, superficial relationships, all of this foolishness is the manifestation of this root. The bulb of the root was my daddy and his abandonment of me. But let's continue on with step 3. Tracing back the root to if the tracing back to your root lands you to a person, then you need to explore openly, honestly, and without abandon every aspect of that relationship and its direct effect on you. The other thing that I said here, if you find that the relationship has been and is still a toxic relationship that no longer serves you, then decide unapologetically to release it as completed. Just release it as completed. This does not have to be a drama scene, okay? You ain't got to call them up and be like, you know what, let me tell you a couple things before I shut you out my life. It doesn't have to be that way. You can peacefully release a person from your life Call it completion without it being a dramatic exchange. It doesn't have to be angry. It ain't got to be, or I have cut people out of my life and they didn't even know it. And they called me one day and was like, hey, I haven't heard from you. And then I give them an honest feedback. Listen, I just don't think that you serve me best in this season of my life. This is why. I love you from a distance. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is right now. What can they say? You know, what can they say? You are entitled to determine who is going to be in your life, who's feeding your life, what what type of light you're letting into your life, what type of nutrients you letting seep into your soil of your life, what type of water. There is such thing as bad water. You do know that, right? So I had to really sit down and explore how the impact of the relationship or lack of relationship with my biological father, and really think about the effects that it's having on my life. Is this a relationship that is serving me today? How am I going to deal with this? You have to come to a decision as to what you're going to deal with that. This may take some time in doing. Please understand that these 4 steps can take years on any one route. Okay? This is not a quick fix. 3 steps to freedom and healing. This is not, listen, I wrote here, you may need a therapist to help you sort through it all. Don't be proud. Don't be embarrassed. Every woman who has ever birthed a beautiful child has needed a midwife to help her through the process of labor. Through each contraction, a guiding through every single breath, through every time she want to just die, give up, get a what do you call those? The epidural. You have to understand that you also are birthing forth a new baby. You are birthing forth your authentic self, who you truly are, who you were intended to be. You are uncovering yourself for the first time. This is a process. Do not think for one moment that who you're looking for, who you're looking at in the mirror is who you truly are. We all wear masks. Some of us wear the mask of alcohol. Some of us wear the mask of just a fantastic smile. Some of us wear the mask of name brand clothing. Some of us wear the mask of a fly bomb weave. But if we ain't got our hair right, we not right. You know why? Because that's not authentically who you are. You have to get down out of all of that and find your authentic you. And when you are trying to birth your authentic you, along with the purpose that God created you for so that you can walk in it, in that divine purpose, you're going to need a midwife. Don't be embarrassed and all prideful. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be prideful if you should find that you need a therapist to serve as the midwife to help you birth who you truly are and be walking in the freedom of your healing. I have a therapist, okay? Her name is Aisha, and we talks, okay? Can we just talk about it today? Can we talk about it? Black women especially. Black people have this stigma of, seeking help, seeking professional therapeutic help to really talk through and drill down on issues like it's leprosy. Do not be prideful or embarrassed if you find that you have to sit with someone that your roots are so deep and so interconnected, because sometimes they are. I know that mine are. That you really find yourself having to sit down and talk to a therapist about to get to the bottom of your stuff. Now, if you find that the relationship has been, once you get down to the bottom of it and you get to your findings, you trace back and you discover that your root lands you to a person. Okay. Basically, you need to determine whether or not that relationship is still toxic. If that relationship is toxic, you have to decide what you're going to do with it. You have to pull up the root. Does pulling up the root necessarily mean booting this person out your life? Not necessarily. It can be your mother that you really love. But setting some healthy boundaries around your relationship that keep you from feeling manipulated by her, or that keep you from feeling abused by her, that's plucking up of a root. For me, with my father, I got sick of this whole rotating door. I felt like he thought I was some kind of play toy. I felt like at any given time when he felt guilty, he would come into my life to appease his own guilt, and then he just disappear and leave me broken in little pieces again, reliving the whole abandonment issue. So for me, the plucking up of my root, when I traced back to my root and it landed me to my father and his abandonment, I had to make an executive decision that my boundary for him was to bury him on June 18th of 2015. Or he no longer has access to my life. He no longer has access to me at any given time. In this situation, for me, I had to pluck up the root by plucking him up out of my life. And you have to make the determination as to whether or not that is what you need to do with your relationship or whatever you find. If you trace back and you find that the root to your manifestation is directly connected to a toxic relationship in your life, you have to decide whether or not you're going to really put some stringent, healthy boundaries around yourself and that person, whether it's your mammy or your daddy or whoever it is. You have to make the decision. Or if you're going to pluck them out of your life altogether. The best gift that you can give to someone who doesn't appreciate your presence is your absence. So you have to make the determination as to whether or not you're going to continue to allow those things to perpetuate themselves in your life. I'm just saying. So the last step is step 4, walk unapologetically in your release. You have plucked up the root now. Okay, you have either done one of two things. If it's come down to a person or relationship that's toxic, you've either drawn some very healthy, stringent boundaries around yourself with that person, or you've plucked them out of your life altogether, peacefully released them. Go about your way, I'm going about mine. Okay, now you must go back to the place. Now that place is empty. You plucked the entire bulb out of the ground and removed it from your life. Now you have this gaping hole. And when you look down into this space of your heart or in your life, this gaping hole, you have memories of what was there and how it impacted your life and how it hurt you. And you begin to relive this victim story that you have attached to that toxic relationship or to that person. And so now what you have to begin to do is to change the perspective of your victim story and layer it with positive affirmations of truth and beauty. And I'm reading from my notes. This is something that I actually put. These 4 steps, I listed them in last Tuesday's comment section of last Tuesday's Queen's 15. But I'm going to do a Queen's 15 on how to take your personal victim story and change your perspective in that story to serve you positively and beautifully. I want to leave you with a thought today before you go and start plucking people out of your life or setting boundaries. I want you to remember something very important. I'm going to use this as an analogy. Here I have an empty 8 to 10 ounce glass. Here I have a completely full 16 to 20 ounce, glass. I don't really know. But you can clearly see that the capacity that this glass has is much less than the capacity of this full 16 to 20 ounce glass. We accept that when we go to pour the contents of this full glass into this one, that this does not have the capacity to hold this volume of water. Let's try it. What happens when we try to pour this entire glass of water into this cup? Uh-oh, I'm spilling it everywhere. What happens? Guess what? It's going to start to fill up. It's going to overflow and begin to spill over the top. So we cannot fit the rest of the water that's in this glass in here because this only has an 8 to 10 ounce capacity. It does not have the capacity of this 20 ounce glass. There's still water in here. If I try to put the rest of this water into the 8 to 10 ounce glass, it's going to overflow. We're going to have a mess, right? We accept that when it comes to dealing with inanimate objects like glasses and cups. But when it comes to people, where we mess up is when we try to get a 20-ounce capacity out of an 8-ounce ability to love. A person can only love you to the capacity that they can love themselves. A person can only trust you to the capacity that they are able to trust, period, themselves or whomever else. A person can only engage fully with you to the degree of a healthy relationship, to the capacity that they can. And when you try to supersize the 8-ounce husband into a 24-ounce husband because that's what your girlfriend got, or the 8-ounce mother capacity, your mother can only love you to the capacity that her mother loved her. She can only discipline you to the capacity. She's going to discipline you and understand discipline to the capacity that she was taught to as a child. If you are neglected by your parents or a loved one, they can only love you to the capacity that they've been loved themselves. And what happens is when you expect that person to treat you better or more than outside of the capacity that they are able to, you set that person up for failure and you set yourself up for a grand disappointment. What you need to do is really look at, learn, find out what your mother's upbringing was like. Because 9 times out of 10, if you understand that she was abused as a child, she was neglected, she was sold for a pack of Colt 45, she was running the streets, running numbers as a teenager to help bring food on the table, or whatever the case might be, you are going to be moved with compassion to understand and accept her capacity, and you will be less likely to cause her or expect her to overflow just to meet your need. You have to meet people where they are sometimes. Now, if this person has a limited capacity, and they realize that you need more. So you tell them, hey, I need more than this. I really need you to respect me. I need you to hold me to a higher regard. You're not going to talk to me like that. I need you to, right? So you're laying out your expectations. They have a choice whether or not to expand themselves to meet the expectations, whether they value the relationship with you enough to expand themselves to meet the capacity or to meet you halfway. You are not responsible for supersizing anyone or causing them to grow to the capacity that you need them to grow. You give them time. You tell them what you need. You tell them what you expect. You set the expectations and the boundaries. And if you find that the individual either just refuses or just simply can't, love them where they are, draw some healthy boundaries around the relationship and keep it moving. Make it a peaceful completion and move on with your life so that you can move forward and blossom the way that you need to blossom in your relationships. So that's our time for today, guys. Leave some comments. If you want to email me or inbox me, if you have some private, topic that you'd like to cover, or you just want to share how this is ministered to you anonymously, or if you just want to tell me how whack you think Talk About It Tuesdays is, email me, honey. I ain't scared of you. Again, my email address is mellysoulkitchen@gmail.com. And again, I'm going to put that in the link below. You guys, I am uploading these videos to my YouTube channel, which is the Soul Kitchen channel, which is the creative arm that extends from Sisters with Invisible Scars. Please support me. Please share the channel link. If you know women that could benefit from this channel or benefit from this page, invite them and I will give them access to the page. Remember, it's a secret page. Remember, I always say, healing is a journey. It is not a destination. Stay the course with me, and we'll be back with another Talk About It Tuesday on next week. Bye. I also offer coaching. I also offer, times we can have Skype. If you don't live in Jacksonville, we can do Skype. We can do different we can talk in different ways just to kind of help you sort out through some of this stuff, because I recognize and have learned there is a wasp up in here and I don't appreciate him. I have learned some techniques and some tools that I am putting into place that are working for me, and I would be more than happy to share what I have found works on this journey, y'all. He is looking at me. All right, so let's finish up so I can kill him.